our guest today, number one guest, the first guest is John Adedoyin,
Hey
and
guys.
I've known him for a few years. And we first met at Mentality. I think it was Mentality, like
Yes.
years ago.
I
I don't know how many years ago it was,
I want to say
but
I remember the first Mentality 2017. So I think it was probably 2018 or years after that. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, something like that. Yeah, yeah, and then we'll bump each other into each other at like
Yeah.
concerts or like just randomly bump into each other
Yes.
and
Yeah.
all
Yeah.
that. So it's really cool. So a little bit more about yourself is that you are a senior conceptual designer, which we're going to go into details about that a bit more. But your experience, you started off as an art director's assistant, which we're going to get into it more. But at the moment, you're a senior conceptual designer at Green Park, which
Yeah.
is, if I don't the description, is a performance-driven content marketing agency
Yeah.
or
Pretty
something
much.
of that sort. Yeah.
Yeah.
Great, awesome. I was reading the website, so I hope it's right. Um, and the reason I've brought John on is because he started. For a lot of people in BDC, a lot of you guys are just starting out. Some of you have never had your first graphic design job, but you've been freelancing. You want to get your foot in, and you just want to kind of start the journey. And what better way than to talk to someone that's actually gone through the journey?
Yeah.
So, without further ado, this is John Adedoyin on the call right now at BDC Talks.
Hi
Welcome.
everyone. Hey. No, thank you. Thank you. So
Welcome, welcome.
just want to say this is a really great platform. What Demi's doing for a lot of us creatives out there. It's really hard to get in there, especially for like Black people. So whatever help we can provide or insights, like I'm happy to be here. So thank you for having me. And yeah, like the first person, so I really
Amazing.
want to make a good impression. But yeah, thank you.
No pressure. No pressure at all. Thanks so much
Yeah,
for coming on. It's you've taken time out of your day to be part of this and it's going to be fun. I'm really looking
yeah,
forward to the
yeah,
conversation.
yeah. Same.
I've got some notes and I'm going to start and I've just given you an introduction. Like hopefully
Yeah.
that introduction did some justice as to
No, it
who
did, it
you
did.
are.
I'm like,
But
I'm
in
like,
your words,
I'm like, I hope I give a
like
good impression. Yeah,
nah, it's you've already you don't have to worry about that.
yeah.
Um, your what I do want to get onto is like your story. So you're a senior conceptual designer, but if you could put it into your own words, who is John? Like, well, how do you who are you? What do you do?
Yeah.
And what's your journey been like up to today? I know that's like kind of like quite open-ended, but how would you describe it?
So I'm John. I would say I've been in the design industry for over 10 years, close enough to hitting 15 now. So I'm a graphic designer and
Mm.
illustrator. So I dabble between the two, and I've been doing this for the longest time now. Yeah, like I've been on a journey of doing branded work, of doing motion design, of illustration, and the biggest challenge that I have for myself is trying to pick, which one do I focus on? And that's the thing about design. Like I've always just found an interest in everything that I see. So I'm a senior conceptual designer, and I work for Lipton Ice Tea. Like I'm through an agency, but I work like I'm placed with the client.
Right.
So it's like a
I
secondment
see.
role. So a senior conceptual
Yeah.
designer, basically, it's more like in the advertising and marketing side of design. So what we do is we work with different markets around the world. So they will have an advertising campaign. And what my role is to basically adapt it for social media purposes, for marketing. So we will repurpose that advert and make it to like short form content. Sometimes we're creating original ideas based on a product that they want to launch. So let's say I'm working with Taiwan and they've got a new milk tea that they want to launch. So I will basically come up with concepts to market that product and make it more suitable for social media rather than, let's say like a standard 15-second
Mm.
advert, um, which, would go on social media, and we all know everyone's attention spans doesn't last that long. So a
Yeah.
15-second advert's not going to work, but a 3 second or a 6 second advert would do more justice. So
Oh
there to
wow.
concept. I'm there to concept the ideas and basically help them with their launch and their marketing campaigns, and yeah, marketing
Wow.
and advertising campaigns. So yeah,
Wow, that's
big
pretty cool.
responsibility.
That's
Yeah,
pretty cool. Like Because when I see senior conceptual designer, because I see a lot of like different types of graphic design titles,
Yeah,
and this it could be really confusing, especially for someone that wants to get into graphic design. Um, I know for me, I would call myself a senior brand designer, but there's a lot of
yeah,
crossover between different graphic design jobs. I see visual designer, conceptual designer,
yeah.
integrated designer. So, is there anything about being a conceptual designer that kind of, I know you've touched on like the short form content and stuff like that, but is there anything that specifically differentiates a conceptual designer from any other type of specialism?
Yeah, so I think this is where like it took me a while to realize because I was like, oh, conceptual designer, that was very new for me in terms of like even just searching or applying
Mm,
for the role. So I think what's different is that it's more
yeah.
marketing and advertising focused. So it's more building a
Mm,
concept for that ad
I
because
see.
in theory like it is a social
Oh,
media post, but we do see it as an advert. So it's like story. It's more about the storyboarding and concepting phase of
okay.
it. It's more taking that initiative, seeing what we're given and what we can take out and build out of it, rather
Mm,
than I know that applies to every role, rather than being like a brand designer that focuses on the brand itself, or a visual designer where it's more like actually building like a visual framework and an identity for a brand. Yeah, I hope that
yeah.
explains it a bit more. But yeah, it's more about
Yeah.
how do we? It's almost like how do we sometimes just start from scratch with nothing, or how do we remix this
Mm,
to make it into something new? And
okay.
yeah, I think with concepting as well, you also have to think about who your audience is compared to
Mm,
maybe
yeah.
other forms of design in certain ways. Yeah,
Yeah. Oh, that's really interesting. That is very interesting. So, like, from someone that does illustration, I would assume because you're doing a lot of storyboarding, that comes becomes very useful in that kind of role. How
it,
much of illustration is required to do conceptual design?
to be honest, depending on how fast we got to turn around, it's actually
Mm,
less illustration in this role, but more.
mm,
I think sometimes the one thing I've learned with working as a designer and working with like non-designer people is almost like you almost want to
mm,
give them a picture of it, what it would look like, picture perfect, um,
mm,
before it actually goes into production. So with these concepts, they're more done in Photoshop, or like I have a lot of the visual elements, so I'm building it kind of like almost like it's ready to kind of just like go into production. In some ways, I do sketch things out just to kind of be like, especially when it's more motion heavy. So I'm just trying to concept like how do for example the
yeah,
products move closer to each other, or how do I transition from
yeah.
this scene to another, or like where does the text appear
Okay,
on the framework?
I
Yeah,
see. Oh,
yeah. So
oh, wow. Seriously,
yeah, less
I'm learning a
illustration.
lot.
So less illustration
Okay.
in this role, but more illustration when more illustration when it's like yes, say like my personal clients or my own client
Mm,
base, where like even the illustration
hmm.
skills will come out when I'm trying to concept like a single cover or a podcast cover, and I try to do
Hmm.
I basically do a rough sketch of what it's going to look like before we go into production or
Okay.
creating. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
I mean, that's really useful because a lot of the people in our community, they are illustrators as
yeah,
well,
yeah,
and they have a knack for drawing. There's one guy that is in the community that he's really good at drawing like cartoons,
yeah.
and I was saying to him that, you know, don't be shy about your skills of illustration because that will
Ex-
actually make you stand out.
it will make you stand out 100%. I think what people it's so you know what one thing this is more of a throwback, but one thing I learned
Mm,
because I came from an art background, an art and design
yeah,
background. So when I got to
same.
university, and you know,
Mm,
like you feel like art and design, they almost kind of pretty much go hand in hand. But you will experience meeting other creatives, and like they have no artistic like or drawing ability that
yep.
they're more computer or print related, and that's the type of work that they
Yep.
create. So you now like meet people like that, and then you get into the design world, and you're almost like you realize it's very beneficial to have that artistic vision and that
Mm,
illustration vision, because one, it can show how I want to say faceted you are, or multi-talented you are, that you don't just like, for example, do like digital work, but you also can do more like illustrated or even digital illustration. And that's going to come up so like handy in scenarios where like a project gets thrown your way and someone's like, oh, we need an illustrator, or does someone know how this works?
yeah. Mm,
Use every skill set that you have to just like let it shine. Show variety. I'll always say that to
yeah.
people. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, that's like funny you say that. Because when I was at university, I was quite shocked that there's a lot of people that didn't actually know about like design or didn't
Design.
know there's just so little that they knew.
Yeah.
And it was really interesting because coming from me, so for me, I studied graphic design in college, and then I
Yeah.
went to university to study it. And I don't know if it's the same for you or not.
Yeah, likewise.
Um,
Like college was
yeah,
okay. College was the first time where like I could use Photoshop and all the Adobe programs. So yeah.
right. For a lot of people on my university course, they had never touched Photoshop, and
Wow.
I was like, oh,
Yeah.
yeah, it was really interesting, really interesting. And I was like, that's really interesting because I've been using
That's
Photoshop since I was in secondary school.
yeah, that's crazy. Cause
So, but yeah, go on.
but no, because I'm like back then, I guess because I remember like the entry to full getting into university. And you like for us like back in the day, you would carry like some big portfolio that you'd
Massive,
have to,
yeah.
yeah. And and I'm assuming in those situations that a lot of those people are probably from an artistic background, so they could show that they could sketch out and draw and conceptualize artwork and pieces. So I'm like, yeah, it's shocking because it's almost like, okay, you're going into design, and with design everything's now more digital focused, and you're like, you don't know how to use
Sure.
Photoshop. And yeah, even our lecturers, they had like extra courses or extra like sessions where you could learn Photoshop, Illustrator, and InDesign, the core free at the time.
Hmm.
And I was
Yeah,
like,
the
oh, I
Trinity.
don't, yeah, literally the Holy Trinity. And I was like, oh, I don't really need these classes. I mean, they're good to have, but it's like, yeah, like I know I
Hmm.
know the basics, and I've had 2 years of being able to learn the
Sure.
basics. But yeah, you'll be surprised by like how many people just haven't touched it at the time. So that's crazy.
Hmm. So what would you say is like your the top tool? How would you rank them? Your top three
Ooh,
design tools right now?
it all depends on like what era of my career I've been, because uh, okay, wait,
Yeah.
are we talking design tools just to use right like in
As you right
general
now,
right
as
now?
you
Oh
right now, what
gosh.
is John's like top three design tools?
Procreate, love it. The
Oh,
Procreate
okay.
app on the iPad, I love it. But I know I can't use that for my day-to-day work. So it literally is Procreate, After Effects, and Illustrator. I think those programs are
Okay.
like, I love you guys. Like, please never change.
Yeah, makes a lot of
Literally,
sense
literally.
for what you
Yeah,
do.
yeah. What
For
about
me, it
okay?
would
If
be
I flip the question back to you, yeah, what
I
would it be
think
for you?
yeah. At the top would be Illustrator.
Yeah,
Then it would be Photoshop. Then InDesign. It's still the Holy
yeah,
Trinity for me.
yeah. And you know what? You know the most funny thing is how many designers I come across, and InDesign is the one that they can never use. And I'm like, InDesign's like the best. I love InDesign because I think
So
growing up,
good.
yeah, growing up, I always thought, you know what, like I might go into editorial one day. Never did, and I don't think I will. But I was like, oh, InDesign is really great to
Mhm.
learn because you just learn about layouts and grids a lot more than the other two programs. And
Yeah.
yeah, I feel like InDesign is so underrated, so underutilized. And I think that's because
Mm.
like in the industry that we're in, PowerPoint and marketing pitches and like keynotes are the preferred method. And for us designers, InDesign comes in handy because you can put a lot of presentations together. But anyone who's not a
Yeah.
designer, they need PowerPoint, they need keynotes. So, yeah, I feel
Yeah.
like InDesign just gets
Yeah.
knocked to the side.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. It's that normally it's like a child that gets neglected.
Yeah, literally, and you're like,
So, but yeah,
you'll be back
but
in,
there's
you'll
so
be
much you
back
can do
soon.
with it.
So much. I love
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
So what I'm gonna do, we're gonna stay back like in the past to where you first got started. Oh,
Okay.
you said that you had formal education
Yeah.
for graphic design. But a lot of people don't have that formal education. I think my
Yeah.
first question actually would be, there's no right or wrong answer, but how important do you think formal education is when you're going to get your first graphic design job?
So I I actually think it's very important. And I know because
Mm,
I know in the design or art community there's always that debate of, oh, you don't really need it. Like it's all like
mm,
self-taught, all of this. But I actually think it brings a good thing
yeah.
because you will not understand the process of people looking at your work and critiquing it. Not just the
Mm,
tutors, but your
very good
peers
point.
as well. You'll learn about working in a team when you get those group projects. You may have an idea of the things you're into, but sometimes it's great for a lecturer to tell you, "Hey, have you looked at this? Because this might be good for you." Just getting that outside input
Mm,
is very crucial. Is very important. I think formal education actually trains you on how to meet deadlines as well, because you'll meet so many creators
good
who are
point.
like, you know what, I'll get around to it XYZ. Next thing you know, the project's due in the next day and you just have nothing and you're rushing, you're rushing, you're rushing. So I think formal education helps you. Also, I think helps you kind of like meet a deadline. And then I think it also helps you with the process of actually getting a project from start to finish. You know,
Sure.
brainstorming ideas to sketching it out to initial designs to developing it to the final outcome. I think education really put that structure in me, and I would say like now that's put me into the workplace and just being able to like execute things like with a better process. So I think it's important.
Yeah,
I would
yeah.
actually say education,
That makes a good
like,
point.
yeah,
That's
really important.
that's a very good argument for it, and that's one of the best arguments I've heard for formal
Yeah,
education in graphic design. Because I lean towards the other side where it's just like it's good, but it's not the only way.
it's not. No.
It's not definitely not the only way. I'm not saying that you said that, but like there's just it does have its benefits. You say
Yeah,
like the benefits that you did point out. And for me, the benefit for formal education was the stuff that you said. It was learning to work in a team. I had to do some teamwork. I had to develop a thick skin because if you're a graphic designer and you don't have a thick skin for critique, you're it comes with the job, so you're pretty
eh,
pissed if you don't have that.
Exactly.
You
If you
have
don't
to
have
have
that,
that.
you're
You
you're
know,
literally trying to hide your work from
mm,
everyone every single day. It's not worth it.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Not like you can't learn that in the workplace, but if you're learning it in a place where you can make mistakes and it's not as, detrimental to your career, so
It,
it is a good thing. Even if that's like in
yeah,
college or university, I think that is a good thing. And
yeah,
for me, it helps me to take on critique, and it helps me to learn how to solve problems
yeah,
and to approach briefs from a problem solving perspective. Whereas
exactly.
it wasn't a thing. The difference between someone that that understands how to follow a brief and doesn't is massive, because you might there's some clients that like I work with, and for example, not playing down people that go on Fiverr and Upwork and stuff like that. There's a place for it, but
Yeah,
quite often people don't know the difference between someone that knows how to follow a brief and not. So
yeah,
because following a brief isn't just about giving someone what they ask for. It's about
exactly,
investigating
exactly.
what the brief is about and what they really need. And
Yeah,
a good designer has gone either gone through formal education or educated themselves, with a course. Doesn't have to be university, but like has learned how to structure their thoughts around the brief. Makes
exactly,
all the difference. And that's
exactly.
what people are really looking for. So
I
it was just
agree.
really interesting to ask that. I used to be very like, how do I put it? I used to be very kind of bitter towards university because for me, I felt like university, I didn't need to be there for 3 years to learn what I did. I didn't feel like I learned that much in my second and third year, but the fundamentals were really good.
Yeah,
But maybe it was just my university. I don't know. That's just my experience.
You will honestly tell you, every designer that I went to college with or went to university with, and then even people I've met in the industry as well, they will always say the same thing, that they felt like uni was a waste of time. Um,
Mm,
and for me as well, I felt that way. But I do look back
mm,
and I'm actually really grateful because there's stuff that I learned and I'm like, I wouldn't have learnt this without uni. I mean, maybe I would have,
yeah,
but it would have been a longer path. It would have been a path of going through like so many like failures to realize like this is what I always needed to do in the first place. So uh,
yeah.
I think there are small things and there are key things that like we can take away, and it's so strange because I'm like,
Mm.
usually I'm an advocate to say like, nah, it wasn't all that. Like 3 years and this is what I'm taking away. Like especially when I first got into the industry, because it was such like a difficult thing to get a job, and you're like, but why did I go to uni?
Mm,
But now knowing where I am
sure.
right now, like I think it's actually helped me. It's helped me a lot more than I
Yeah.
realized. Yeah, I've
Mm,
said that for sure.
that's very good. And you touched on the first time. Okay, what was it like getting your first graphic design job? Because you just finished uni, and it's
Yeah.
like, yeah, I'm gonna, for most people, they just finish uni or whatever, and then I want to get into graphic design. As a black graphic designer, was that what was that experience like, and how long did it take for you to actually get your first job?
So so the job that you mentioned in the intro, that was literally a placement. So that was literally 2 weeks. We all had to do a placement at uni, which was really good. So I'm really grateful for that. But my
Mm,
first job
that's good.
was working in print as a designer. So I worked in a print shop like in Bermondsey, London. That taught me a lot. That taught me a lot about just getting into like design in general. So I graduated in 2011, and that's when no, not the pandemic. We got through so much trauma. So that was when the that was when the recession was happening. So every job that you applied for once you graduated, it was like you need minimum 2 years experience. You need 5 years experience to get into this role, and we're all looking as graduates like, I haven't got any experience. This is the job to give me the experience, but no one's giving it to you. So it took me, I think, about a year and a half to actually like land this print job. And it was like a print shop run by like a Nigerian, which like I'm really grateful for because he helped me get my like foot in
Yeah.
the door. But he was a strict Nigerian. I don't know. I know this might be a bit narrow to just us Nigerians, but have you ever heard of Ovation magazine? It was like, was it Ovation? But okay,
Ovation. Why does that sound familiar?
so my mum used to
It
sell it.
sounds very
Um,
familiar.
yeah, it like basically
Yes, 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 yes. Yeah, I remember it. I remember.
and it'll have the
Yeah,
printout of like all the big like key events in Nigeria, something like
yeah.
that.
Yeah.
But basically, he owned it, but he owned it.
Oh
It's all based in
wow.
Nigeria, but he had yeah, a popular gossip magazine in Nigeria. So he owned it, but he ran
Okay.
his own print shop in Bermondsey, and he would do large print orders for his church, or like funerals, for just everyday like business people. So that was like my first design role, but I took it on part time because
I see.
when I got into the role, like being a graduate, like you're taught so that I think this is why I'm grateful for education, because you're taught how to design in particular ways. So you have an idea of what design should be. So I get into this role, and that's all thrown out the window. It's suddenly like we don't have those fancy fonts. Look, it's like a small business. Like let's use like Times New Roman. So the quality of design isn't there, because like look at every like takeaway flyer that you see now, how busy it is because it's got like, for example, pizza image here,
Yep.
Coca-Cola like PNG file here, text, different multiple fonts, and that's basically coming from the print shop. So that's everything you've been taught not to do, and then you're coming into a role and they're like, yeah, it's fine. Like, use this font, make this
Torture.
bigger. Yeah, use Garamond, Garamond font, and you're just like, huh. I think I might. I think this is what I'm not supposed to
Like some
do. So,
commoner.
but yeah, so, but I literally, it taught me. I think he was really impressed by what I knew as a designer. Um, and the things that I was bringing to the table. So every time we had customers walk in, so some customers you're just like they just need to print off something because they're going on holiday. They need to print off their booking ticket or something. And then you have customers who like we have a funeral coming up. We need this laid out. So this is where like InDesign comes in handy because I'm like, okay, now I know how to lay out for someone like a funeral thing or like a flyer for business or stuff like that. So that opened my eyes, but I took it on part time because I was like, I know I can do bigger and better things, and I don't want to be held down by this as well. Yeah.
Sure.
So it took me a while, but
I've been there.
yeah. So what about you? How was it for you? Like first
For
time?
me,
Yeah,
getting my first design job was and I've shared it with the group before, was straight out of uni. I
yeah.
basically couldn't pay my last month of rent at in Bournemouth, and
Wow.
I was like, I'm gonna call my pastor. So I called him. I was like, "Can you pay my
Yeah.
last month of rent? I'll come work for you." And he was like, "Cool, free labor, fine." So he paid my last month of rent,
Yeah.
and I went to go work in my church office for a while, and I had overpaid my dues, to be honest,
Yeah.
but
Yeah. Yeah.
I stayed for a while and I was doing a bit of everything. And just like you said, you go to university to learn certain things, to learn the fundamentals and the rules of design, but then you go into the
And
workplace and you feel like
ex-
someone's literally moving your hand on the mouse
yeah,
pad. And,
exactly.
but they did trust me, to be honest. They trusted me quite a bit. But sometimes I
Yeah.
had to kind of convince people. But it was such a like hectic, kind of like fast paced workplace that
Yeah.
when I was done there, every other job seemed easier. But it gave me that kind of advantage to get my next job,
Yeah.
which was at a web agency. So I had to kind of really grind to get my first job as well. And, the
Likewise.
commonality being there is that using your network is really, really important
Mhm.
because you might be applying for all these jobs on LinkedIn for your first graphic design job, but you're competing with so many people. But then
Exactly.
if you look at your network, there might be someone that might hire you maybe for like just like volunteering or doing a placement or for like a lower salary or whatever it is. But just kind of using your network is really important. I think that's something that some people, don't, no matter the industry, it's a
Yeah.
skill that you really need. And to
Exactly.
start when you start early, it could really get your foot in the door. So if someone's looking for their first graphic design job, like take advantage of your network and just try and get that first role so that on your CV it can be like, I've actually worked in this kind of
Yeah.
environment, so
Exactly.
that you can move on to your next thing.
Yeah. So for me, and I'll jump on that. There was a period because I was working like part time, so I was also I was working in retail as well, and I made a connect. Like you're working on, I'm working in a store where they have different concessions. So you have, and everyone you meet in retail has a dream. They want to be this. They want to work in
Yeah.
marketing. They want to work on, but unfortunately, due to like lack of jobs, we're all here selling clothes, which isn't like a bad thing. But like when you have bigger dreams and a bigger purpose, we're all trying to like help each other and strive to get out. So
Mm.
during that whole like graduation phase and trying to get into the industry, like I'm working retail part time, working in this print store, and then I also have like a little few like design clients on the side. So what people know, I'm a graphic designer. I do like a little like logo for them. Next thing you know, that person's left retail. They finally got their career job or like that foot in there. But and then
Mm.
like I'm doing like church flyers for them. And then they're moving up in their career. And it literally is who you know because I think one of my first like biggest like projects was doing like a small piece for like Ralph Lauren, and basically it was because of that
Wow.
person who who like I worked with in retail. they hooked me up and they recommended me, and I was like, yeah, I can do this. A bit, like it was a small project, but it was one enough to be like, I can put this on my portfolio. I can use this. I'm gonna be like, I've worked on a project for Ralph Lauren, and it's like, okay, yeah, like that now helps me kind of like push myself
Sure.
up, uh, especially where like
Mm.
we're really like scrapping for opportunities and stuff. So that to me is like
Mm.
it's who you know, and that's from all walks of
That's
life.
it.
And I think now that we're both in this position where we're experienced, it's almost like before we used to look at the situation like, I don't know anyone. Everyone's like, oh, it's who you know. I'm
Yeah.
like, I don't know anyone. And now I'm at that position where it's like, I know people now, and I see job situations
Yeah.
open up. So I'm now in a position to start recommending people, and I think I'm more grateful
That's
for
it.
that because I've put like a few people forward for roles, and like I'm grateful for that because yeah,
Mm.
it took
Mm. That's
it
it.
took a while to get into the industry, and now I'm like, okay, I'm in a much better position to help the next people
That's
on
it.
their way. So yeah,
Mm. That's it. That's a really good because when you get the one thing I'm really passionate about as well is kind of giving people a chance. You see what I mean?
yeah,
Because sometimes you might not just be unlucky, and that's
exactly.
really it doesn't mean like you don't have the skills or anything like that. You might just not have be fortunate enough to at the time to get your first job. But once you do get your first job, as long as you're a good steward of that job and you're willing to grow and learn new things and be humble, I think you would go really far. I think humility is one
Exactly.
of the biggest assets a
Uh,
graphic
uh,
designer can have because
Literally.
you might really like something that you do, and someone will be like, "Sorry, we're not using that," and you just have to be like, "Okay, that's
So,
it's your choice, not mine."
and it hurts. It really
Painful.
does hurt. It hurts, and you're like, you know what? I have to understand it from their point of view. And I'm like, okay,
Hmm.
let me listen to what they have to say, scrap everything, every vision that I had, and rework it to make it
Hmm.
to what they asked
That's
for.
it.
In some cases, it really works out. In others, you're like, you know what? We could have done better. Yeah. But
Yeah.
humility is literally like you have to let go of like your design ideas sometimes and just be like, you know what? I give this to someone
Sometimes,
else
yeah.
and let's
Yeah,
see how this goes. Yeah. That's
that's
a
it.
big one. That's
That's
actually
it.
a big
So
one.
in terms of like so for someone that is what would you advise someone that's never had, you know, maybe they work in retail, like you said, or maybe they have another job that they do in the admin and all that kind of stuff, but they're genuinely interested in getting their first graphic design job. What kind of steps can they take to, we've talked about networking and stuff, but
Yeah.
like, what kind of steps can they take to actually get their foot in officially to start getting like their first paid role? Do you think? How would you advise them?
So the first thing I would say is know what area of design you want to go into. So many people are like, oh, you know, I don't mind doing anything. And then I think you'll find yourself doing everything and then realizing, like, I don't want to go into that direction. I want to build. So I think have a rough idea of what you want to step into. From there, do passion projects. I think for me, it was always like putting like just drawing, putting my illustrations out there, sharing it on social media, just kind of like getting those visions to life. So I would say if you're into doing logos, do a fake project. Find like one of those fake projects online. Create, learn to create a logo, put it out there. Just keep putting
That's it.
keep putting yourself out there. Keep posting online. Keep creating on the sides. Uh, and what you're doing is essentially building up your portfolio. With that, you can start putting it to get that experience. I think from the feedback you may get, because I know most recruiters or most jobs might not give you feedback, but you will get an inkling of what you're doing well and what you're not. But I think no, the most important thing is to know where you want to go into and just create outside of whatever your day to day job is. If you're not creating, you're not
That's it.
like building that portfolio. I think that those two are
Mm,
very crucial in my eyes. Yeah.
that's it. It's good that you said that because one of the stuff I had written down was about being a specialist versus being a generalist, and
Yeah,
people are saying that specialize, but I'm one of those people that says specialize, and for someone, there's different people that they're not graphic designers, but they have some creative skills that make them stand out. And like we talked
yeah,
about the illustration part of things, some people are good video editors. Some people are good at Excel.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
You
yeah,
see what I mean?
exactly.
Like it doesn't even have to be a creative like thing, but like these other skills that you have will actually make you stand out more.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
specializing, so would you say like is it never too early to specialize or to start planning to specialize at least or
It's interesting because okay, for me, I'm
Mhm.
like, I don't even know where I want to specialize because one day it's illustration, next thing it's motion, next thing it's just general design.
Sure.
Um, but
Yeah.
I think the importance is that you specialize in something, but also know how to do other things as well, so that when
Uh,
opportunities do arise, you're like, hey, look, I'm really good at this, but I also do know these things as well. And it's never too bad to know like a lot of things.
yeah.
So would I say to specialize early? That's a hard one. I would say yes, if you really know this is the one thing that you want to do. So
Okay.
if you want to be a logo designer or a brand designer or like building identities for companies, I would say specialize in a certain area in that. But also just know other things such as like illustration, photography,
Mm,
iconography. If you know those things, you will know how to combine that into the work that you do. And I think that makes you stand out from the crowd.
hmm
I think I'm even at this point where I'm like, um, marketing or understanding marketing is very crucial for
mm,
designers,
yeah.
even though it's nothing to do with like actual creating. I think if you understand what clients are looking for and the people that you're going to talk to day to day, having a knowledge of marketing also
Yeah.
like expands your variety, and I also think that makes you stand out as well.
That's it. Yeah. I would agree with that. I would totally agree with that. I think maybe specializing it's a good idea to have. Well, I would say at the beginning having a key skill that you're good at is a good idea.
Very,
But also balancing it with, like you said, other skills. So if you're like the best, kind of like you can animate really well. Okay, it's just like a example. I've worked with a lot of web developers, not web
yeah,
designers, web
yeah,
developers.
yeah,
I've only ever met maybe worked with one person that's a great designer and a great developer at the same time.
yeah.
That's a unicorn because I rarely
That's
meet them.
exactly,
Right.
exactly.
You know, yeah. And
So,
for the most part, developers, they know a lot of code, but they don't know the first thing about design fundamentals. But
mhm.
and I'm not insulting web developers, but from my experience, but sometimes they think that they're designers. So you
Mhm.
go to a website and for some reason the icons are jumping over the place and you're like, why is it doing that? So, but if they balanced it out with the knowledge of design, they'll be unstoppable.
Exactly.
So it can't be too much of one thing to start with because you're not gonna get.
Hmm.
I don't think you're gonna get hired to be honest.
Exactly. Exactly.
But people at the junior stage are looking for people that can do a bit of everything. But it's
Hmm.
to you will stand out if you're like the designer that just happens to know how to do coding, or just
Yeah.
happens to know how to animate, or just
Yeah.
happens to know how to edit videos. So I think that's how I would position a junior designer. I think.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. I think it's important for juniors to know that like, hey, we don't require you to know like every, for example, if you're just general design, we don't expect everyone to know like I must know the ins and out of Premiere Pro. It's almost like, hey, you could be really great with creating posters, or creating key visuals. Amazing. Just a bit of video editing is good enough, rather than just being a pro at like creating posters and key visuals, and then also trying to be a pro at video editing. Like we require you to just have a bit of knowledge, and from there it depends on
Yeah.
hoping like you're working with great people who are willing to teach you. But from there, like
Mm.
when you're using this program more, you're gonna learn things, you're gonna pick it up, and from there, like you'll build that knowledge that you've already like specialized in is here, and then you're slowly building those other things up. You can't. The one thing about designers is like you're not expected to know every, but
Mm.
pockets of different things here and there is going to help you out.
That's it. That's it.
Yeah,
That's true. I'm looking at the time. I just want to make sure we. I'm going to open up the floor for anybody that wants to ask questions. But while I'm waiting for them to type the questions in the chat, if they're going to ask the questions, if they don't, we'll just talk some more. But like,
yeah.
one thing I really wanted to talk about is, as a black graphic designer, your experience. How would you describe your experience as a black graphic designer? And has there been anything that's kind of been somewhat challenging for you to progress into being a senior designer as a black graphic designer? Do you think there has been anything that's kind of been challenging or not? It's great if it's not, but like even the imposter syndrome, like have you? Like, I know for me, I've never really worked with someone that looks like me
Yeah,
in my career.
yeah.
So for me, I'm just like I didn't really feel like I belonged sometimes. So for you, like, what was that like progressing?
So I think if you got to know me like deep, like or my upbringing, like I've been used to like being in like a really multicultural like experience. Um, I'm used to like I think I'm used to like multiple cultures, and then also just being in London as well. So I mentioned
Mm.
in retail it's almost like you meet like a whole diverse amount of people, and you have more black people in there than you do in the office in the office job or in the agency. So my experience is similar to yours. Like I literally work in a place, and I will literally be the only black designer in there, and it doesn't make me feel uncomfortable, but it does make it stand out a lot more because I'm almost like I know so many
Mm.
black people outside of work, but inside work, I'm like, where are you? Like, where is
Where are
everyone?
you?
So I'm literally like, the only times I've ever really met a black designer is outside of work, because
Mm.
I'm generally the only
Interesting.
black designer. But the one thing about my position right now is, which is really great, is that in some cases, no, my team, my little design team that I have, uh, we're all from like African descent. So I have one
Oh,
designer
great.
who's based in South Africa, born and raised. But I think if you look back at his history, it might be more like a Indian background. But
Mm.
don't quote me on that one. But it like he's not
Yeah,
black like us, but it's more
sure.
Indian, like based in South
Yeah,
Africa. Then my junior
yeah.
designer is Egyptian or like half Egyptian,
Mm.
and not black, but it's like you're from an African descent. So it was
Mm.
almost like, yeah, I can see that like we're not held back. I know it's not like a team of black people, but I'm almost like, okay, you know what? There's a win that like at least like we're all a team from African descent. I'm Nigerian, so it's like that to me. That made me feel proud. But yeah, that's the biggest struggle that I've
That's
faced
cool.
is being the only designer, being the only black designer, or sometimes just pretty much being the only black person in the office or in the team.
Yeah.
It doesn't make me feel uncomfortable, but it really does. It is noticeable because I'm almost like, where are people? And then I'm like, has race held us back? And I would love to believe it hasn't,
Mhm.
but I'm sure it, like, in many ways it has. And it's a shame. I really hope that does change. And I really am pushing for
Yeah.
more diversity in the workplace.
Mm.
Yeah. So if I just move on to imposter syndrome, it's funny because I remember saying this on Twitter years ago. I actually don't believe in imposter syndrome. But
Okay,
I do
okay.
know, I know it's a thing. I don't believe it in myself because I think where like it's not imposter syndrome, I think it's sometimes like a task is given to me and it's something I've never done before. So
Mm.
it's more anxiety of like, how do I tackle this? What's the best approach to get the end result? So I sometimes it's more about the lack of knowledge rather than like feeling like, oh, I'm a fake for doing this. sometimes when I do feel, or sometimes like when I do find success in a project, I'm almost like, I don't know how we did it, but I'm gonna say like it was because of these things rather than like say, oh, it was all me or something. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's most of us are winging this, to be honest. Like, my career, I've done so much winging and so much googling
Yes.
that most of the stuff I learned, I learned
It,
online. To be
yeah.
honest.
Uh, Honestly, because most of my career as well, like this is the first job role where I've actually worked with other designers. Every time I've been the only designer. Okay, maybe I can't say this is the first because I remember in the print job I did have another designer. But this is a situation where, well, just most of my career, it's almost like, well, I have no one to turn to for advice. I have no one to say, ask, oh,
Yeah.
how do I do this on XYZ? So I think
Mm,
for many of us, and the rise of YouTube as well, it's almost like, okay, how do I do this?
mm,
I don't know. Sometimes you're through a stressful situation and you're just almost like, okay, how do I set this
yeah.
document into CMYK to make it like ready for print? How do I make sure
Yeah.
like all of this stuff and like you really do have to like Google and
Yep.
learn as you go and like it's challenging, but it's also worth it because now you
Yeah.
can pass that advice on to the next person.
Yeah. Yeah. It's good that you mentioned that, imposter syndrome doesn't like bother you, or it's not something that you subscribe to, because I feel like a lot of us, it's quite like a key term nowadays. So we feel like it's really, really normalized. And I think it is normal. Like, not
Yeah,
like, if
yeah,
you're feeling for imposter syndrome, that's fine. But I've had to flip it on its head and be like, imposter syndrome isn't really a bad thing. It's actually
yeah,
I imagine it as a someone that's kind of like, it's like a friend that's trying to keep you in check, pretty
yeah,
much. Don't get too
yeah, yeah, yeah.
comfortable because you might mess this up. Or just like, I think it's about embracing that anxiety and embracing that feeling and being like, what's it telling me to do?
Exactly.
If you don't feel, if you're in an environment and you might be the only black person, the black designer, and you feel a certain way. What's it trying to tell you? What's your body actually telling you?
Yeah.
The way you feel, is it because you feel like you do need to step up your game, or what it is it? And it's just good to explore that. But what you were about to say, something?
So I've like the more I've grown in my career, like I will look around and be like, there really is no other black person in this room. There really is no other designer or no other black designer or creative in this room. And I literally have to say to myself, I am meant to be here. No one else
Mm-hmm.
can tell me. No one else can tell me nothing because I'm like I owe it all to God, first of all. Like I'm really grateful
Yeah.
to God.
Yeah.
And all my creativity comes from him.
Mm.
And I'm like, there's a reason why he's put me in this situation. There's a reason why
That's it.
I'm here. And if I look back at the things I've created, I understand why I'm in this room. I understand why I'm in this situation. And I have to say
That's
that
it.
to myself because I'm like, I have to believe it. There genuinely is
That's
no
it.
other reason. Like I'm not here because like I'm hitting the diversity quota. I'm here because I have the skills to to be here. Now to try and get to the next position, I know I have to
Yeah.
work on the things that God has given me, and I have to work on the things that I know I'm lacking. So I'm like I'm supposed to be here, and I
Mm.
I, I have to say that to myself, and I have to believe it. So I think everyone as creatives, you have to look at yourself and be like, I'm here, and what am I going to do with it?
Yeah. Yeah. That's
Yeah.
really good. You know, where something I want to touch on in terms of like the next steps for people. So you've mentioned getting to the next stage. So when is it a good time to, how do you know when it's the right time to move on to the next job?
You know.
Because sometimes we get so comfortable, and we get comfortable in being uncomfortable. I've been there where I've been like, oh, this
Yes.
job, I think it's time for me to move. But I stay there for like 3 years or four
Yeah,
years.
yeah,
And
yeah.
it's like, why haven't I moved? Or is it because I don't know what it is? So how do you know when it's time to move on, for to the next job. I know it's different for each person, but for you, like what has been like, how do you navigate that?
Uh, so how do I phrase this one? It's almost like if you feel like a pro, if you feel like a pro at what you do day to day, it's time to move on. If you genuinely feel like a pro, like
Oh,
if a everyday task
I
feels like,
see.
oh, I can do this, like easy peasy, no problem at all.
Mm.
It's time for you to move on. Because but I know it's a lot easier said than done because I'm like, oh yeah, there's still like really challenging work, and there's really challenging work, and you're feeling like, I can still do this regardless. Like as much as it's a challenge, it's still easy to do. But I think
Mm.
we as people, we can get very comfortable. Sorry, I'm just reading the chat as well.
Yeah, go on.
Yeah, I think we as people, wait, so that's why designers always
It
feel
says,
weird. Uh,
yeah, that's
yeah,
why designers always feel we're charging for their skills.
yeah. Wait, yeah. Sorry, let me read. Okay, that's okay. Like when you, okay, like when things take you like 5 seconds to
Okay,
do.
yeah, yeah, it's what you mean. Yeah, it's that you're so good at your job that, that you can do things really quickly. So therefore people think that it's cheap or that
Yeah.
they shouldn't pay you
Yes.
your
Oh,
worth.
yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I completely understand. Yeah. That you value. You need to understand the value of what you're bringing to the table. But no. What was I trying to say? It's easy for us to get comfortable because we have such a good routine. It's almost like, well, I know in this situation I can get X Y Z done, sent to the client, get feedback, blah blah blah. But I think we also need to understand. Um, we have to put ourselves in a bit more of uncomfortable situation in order to grow. It's almost like, okay, we need to step up and move on so that the next person comes on and takes on that role that you're finding easy to do. If we're staying flat, we're kind of not letting the gears turn for ourselves and then for the next person as well.
Mm,
So yeah, like in many situations, like I've gone through that situation, and in many ways, I'm still going through it now. So I'm literally looking at like, well, what do I need to
mm,
do to make sure I get on to the next step? But
mm.
when you know, and when you're a bit complacent with what you're doing, you know that's time for you to move on.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see a
Yeah.
question in the
Yeah.
chat.
Absolutely. I agree. Yeah. So George says, does age play a role in getting a job? That's a good
Um,
question.
yes,
Yeah.
okay. So I think for juniors, it's not too much of a problem. I think I think when you're starting out, it's actually not an issue. Like you can start from any age. I was given advice to someone who has had a career like in the music industry and is like, oh, you know what? Now I decided I want to switch into design. But I was like, but they were going to go back to college. They're going to go back to college and then get the education and become a designer. And I'm like, this. I think this guy was like maybe slightly younger than me, but I was like, that's fine. Just get your feet wet because at least like you can start off with freelancing, start off doing small work for clients, and just build it up. Um, and then you can get yourself in a job. I think where it really does play a factor is on the type of role that you're applying for. Certain clients are probably looking for example, like marketing and just thinking about who their target audience is. I like, okay, I'll talk about my job role. So we work for Lipton Ice Tea and we target a Gen Z audience. Me as a millennial, I can lead the team and say like, we need you to. I can give my millennial input, and I can delegate the tasks. I can delegate the work to the team and do that. But for our junior designer, we can't hire a boomer. We can't hire someone who's like, I'm gonna say 40 because I'm sure no one on this no one on this call's 40. We can't hire 40. We can't hire 40-year-olds to be the tone of voice for a Gen Z audience. George
George says,
says,
I'm funny.
okay. Sorry. Okay, we can't hire a 50 we can't hire a 50-year-old to be the tone of voice for a Gen Z audience. So that's where I think age
Sure.
plays a role. And then even
Mm,
applying for certain positions, I think sometimes we do get to a point where it's like if we're at a certain age and we're not hitting certain strides, it does play a factor into a particular role. It doesn't play a factor into every role. So just know
yeah.
it depends on the role that they're asking for. It's not every role, it's just some.
Mm,
But like George, being in your 40s, you can build your own clientele. You can start your own business. You can be a designer. You can get yourself into those freelance positions. You can get yourself into a main job as well. There's nothing that's going to stop you from doing that. In some cases, particular roles for what they're trying to achieve, certain age groups won't really
mm,
hit the criteria of what they're looking.
sure. That's a good answer. Um, Nathaniel asks, does a portfolio have more importance than educational background?
I don't.
I have my
I
thoughts on
wouldn't.
this one, but you go ahead.
I wouldn't say more. I think the one thing about us as designers, I think we actually do need to value education as much as like we think like
Mm,
we know creativity is within us. We know it can be produced by like
yeah,
research and knowledge and stuff. But I think we also have to understand the importance of what education shows.
yeah,
Um, and you may hear this from different people. I think education really does show. There's the more superficial thing about education is that it shows that like you were able to go into education and you were able to complete this and you saw something from the start to finish, and that's what recruiters or job uh, recruiters are going to look for, or job roles they're going to look for. They want to see that you
mm,
started from start to finish and you completed it. Does it pay more? Does your portfolio pay more of an importance? I would say not more. Okay, I would say it plays an importance because in many cases, and some people they will hire you because of how fabulous your portfolio is. But I think the both are equal. Like I would say, like it's valuable to have an education, and it's valuable to have like a killer portfolio.
mm.
If, for example,
So
if someone's
that's
highest
interesting.
education, my art director, no,
Yeah.
sorry, my creative director,
Mm,
went to college, and didn't go to university. But he's I'm like, if you saw his background, he worked in print, he worked in photo shoots, he worked as like a photography, like as a photography, or in those studios doing that photography work. So he's built
mm,
himself up to get to that position. And where most people would be like, okay, yeah, I've gone to uni. Uni or even just getting a first doesn't mean you're guaranteed a job. It's the passion, it's the work, it's the
mm,
portfolio that you build to get you in there. You need the passion in order to rise up into the playing field. Doesn't work for everyone, but for certain
mm.
people it does. So I'll put it like that.
Yeah, yeah. I would double down on that and say that education is not the be all and end all. Neither is a
Yeah,
portfolio.
yeah,
Um, your portfolio says a lot about you, but your character, when people interview you, they want to see your passion and they want to see how you solve problems.
yes,
Whether you've gone to had formal education or not, if you don't get formal education, the learning that you need to prove that you can solve problems. I guess like the kind of getting the education and getting like a certificate or something, it's kind of proof that you've done it, kind of.
yes,
Because someone has said, okay, you've done this. I give you this as proof. Personally, in my career, no one's really ever looked at my degree personally, but for me, the fundamentals that I learned in college and in university helped me to be able to present myself.
mm-hmm.
So I knew how to present my portfolio when I was looking for a job because of the education I had. But if someone's just maybe gone to college, like there's no reason why they can't get a job. It's really about how you present yourself and how you present the work, and your thought processes. Like with everyone that I speak to,
Yeah,
what's your thought process? How do you get from point A to point B?
exactly. I've
Yeah.
hired someone who didn't go to university, and just like studied at college level. I've had a friend who worked, I want to say for the Telegraph, uh, without getting like a uni degree as well. Like
Mm,
education is important, so I would always encourage um
mm,
that, but I would also say like it's not impossible, but in some
mm.
cases it could just be harder because you haven't got that evidence in ways to say that like
Sure.
I can share my thought process.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. And sometimes the work you do in college or in university, even if it's a short course, like you can use that as proof in your portfolio as well. I know that I had like college work and university work in my portfolio when I was getting applying for jobs.
yeah,
So like those kind of things. Again, that's it's like it's on the side by side with passion projects.
yes,
It gives
yeah,
you like scenarios where you have to use your brain and think. It's just
exactly.
control. It's just a controlled environment. So if you haven't gone to college or university, go and chat GPT and tell the tech to write you a brief. Or there's a lot of websites for these kind of stuff. Like there's a brief, and you being able to follow the brief and be able to show how you solve problems and how you did research and all that kind of stuff is really really important. But it's a really good
Very,
question. Like,
yeah,
does portfolio have more importance than educational background? It's not a yes or no. It depends on the person. For me, like I would put portfolio over education, but like it depends on how you present that portfolio. Just because you have a
yeah,
portfolio doesn't mean you're better than someone that went had an education and vice versa.
yeah. I think that portfolio really has to show your drive and your passion for every brief that you take on. Like
Yeah.
they want to see your thinking. You know, in some cases they want to see something new. They want to see something stunning. Like they want to see that
That's it.
drive. So yeah,
Yeah, that's it. Wow, I could talk about this for like
yeah, same.
hours, but I know we're kind of just over an hour. Any any final thoughts that you want to leave with the audience in terms of what we've just talked about?
Yeah. So there's a guy called Johnny Cupcake, who I went to his talk. He sells t-shirts, but he makes it like it's a bakery brand. And he says one thing,
Okay.
and it stuck with me. It's like if you don't do it, whatever you're doing, if you don't do it, someone else will, and they'll do it better. So I that's always stuck with me because it's always like, look, if you have an idea or you have a thing that you really want to pursue, do it. Like really, really strive to do it. Because if you don't, you're gonna watch someone else do it and you're gonna see them in ways live out the vision or the dream or the ideas that you had. So always put it out there. Other things I would say is
Hmm.
okay. I said this to I said this to my girlfriend. I hope this actually makes sense. But I said like be a sponge where you're actually absorbing everything that comes your way. Like take a lot of things in where you might be focused on web design. Look at like web design for illustration, web design for photography, web design for this. Like do your research, look through Pinterest, Behance, magazines, like take a step outside, see the billboards out there, like be a sponge and like absorb everything. Maybe a sponge isn't the best analogy, but just always
I think
try
a
to
sponge
take things
works.
in. Yeah, okay, good. Be a sponge and just always absorb things in because you will have ideas that will come to you through looking at different things outside of what you do.
Mm.
So those are my takeaways. Being black, being a black creative, there's many opportunities for us. We have to also create those opportunities for ourselves. But just because you're black, don't ever feel like that's going to hold you back in whatever creative journey you're pursuing. Find ways where you can actually leverage, our culture, leverage who
Yeah.
we are as people. Yeah,
Yeah.
those are the things I'd always say to people. Believe in yourself. Believe in your source.
Amazing.
Yeah.
That's believe in yourself. That's awesome. That's great. Like, thanks so much for dropping that, and thanks so much for like coming on and sharing your experience and knowledge and being so transparent. I for one was really, really like found it really insightful, and to have that conversation with you, Anna, and I'm sure everyone else here was also found it really, really insightful. How can they follow you? How can people follow you?
Ooh. So I'm building. I can type it in the chat. So I have a website,
Yeah.
johnadedoyin.com, and that's my portfolio website. I'm in the process of like trying to actually build a small business. You can find me
Mm.
at Ooh, should I type it in the chat?
Yeah, I can
So you
type it
can
for
find
you.
me at,
I can type it for you.
yeah, you can find me at John the Creative, and you can find that on Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
Or you can find JohnAddyn, and that's where you can find me on Instagram as well. That's where you'll hopefully see my work and just maybe who I am, and like always feel free to reach out. I can give as much advice to anyone who's willing to seek it. I'll give my yeah. Sorry, this is yeah.
I spelled it wrong.
Yeah, yeah. I
Cool.
abbreviated my
I'll
name
drop.
on that one.
I'll send it out anyway.
But yeah,
I'll
that's where
send
you
it
can
out
find me.
anyway.
Awesome,
Yeah.
awesome. But
Yeah.
yeah, that's where you can find me.
Amazing.
Awesome. I just want to say thank you for having
Brilliant.
me. This has been a pleasure because
Uh,
uh, I've I've had that thought as well of like helping young and up and coming creators, and I saw
mm,
that you were doing this, and it was really good because I think we all as designers have this desire to really help out the next ones
yeah.
after us. And again, like we don't see ourselves um, in these spaces, and we need to understand why.
Mm.
So, I just want to say thank you for the work that you're putting in because there's so many people
Thanks, man.
who can take this all in and be like better designers. Yeah.
John wants to know how he can help out the 40-year-old. One more question. How much do you hate AI? I love AI.
It depends on the.
I don't
It's
hate
so
it.
fun. It depends on the type of AI. I love
We'll
the
definitely
whole
do a
chat.
talk on AI.
I love the whole chat GPT aspect to it all.
Yeah.
I love the all of that stuff. Midjourney and Adobe Firefly. I have my concerns because, like I said,
Well, yeah,
illustration's
yeah,
a big passion for me. So I'm like, yeah, like I love detail. So if I can look at something and I'm
yeah,
like something's questionable about this, that throws me
yeah.
off. I want to see the detail. I want to see the beauty in every single mark that you create. That's my issue with AI. I think it
Hmm.
comes in handy to get work out there like ASAP, but I don't
Yeah,
want it to be the final product. And then George, how do you
yeah.
help
Well
a
said.
40-year-old? Honestly, best thing you can do is just start creating and start putting your work out there. And I think you can get a feel of
Hmm.
what you're doing right and what you're doing wrong. And again,
Hmm.
like Demi mentioned, networking or just kind of seeing the people in position. I think people need to know you're a designer, so put your stuff out there. Let
Hmm.
people see what
That's
you've
it.
got, and then things are going to start coming to you. That's the best advice I can give.
That's awesome. Oh, that's so cool. I have to wrap it up here. I
Yeah,
know people are now sending all their questions, but they touched on some really cool stuff, especially AI. So we'll definitely do an AI conversation.
yeah.
Of course, you can always join the community, John. Having you
Yes.
on there as a voice would be really, really cool. So
Yeah.
I'll send you the link if you'd like to, if you'd be happy to join, and they can talk to you as much as they want, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, I think that'd be good. That'd
But
be good.
yeah, yeah, awesome, cool. So thanks for joining us. And all of this will be on YouTube. You probably just watched it on YouTube at the moment. So this will try and do this every month. And we'll just keep it going. But for now, just like stay humble, keep creating, and yeah, we'll see you later.
Take care. Thank you.
If you like this clip, make sure you like, hit the bell and subscribe so you see more videos like this. And if you're a Black graphic designer who wants to join a community where you can learn new skills and network with other people, hit the link in the description to join the Black Design Circle, and I'll see you there.